Hello guys, welcome back to John's Workshop, and in this episode it's welcome to the Eagle hand operated surface grinder. So there were a few guesses last week after my little teaser, and a couple of you kind of intimated towards this, and you were right. It's one of the things that has been on the shopping list for a while. Totally can't afford it right now after the issue we've just had with the boiler in the house, but this came up and I took a punt on it. So it's been bought unseen, and largely because the restrictions up here in Scotland, certainly when I put the order in for this, we were still fully locked down, couldn't even go out of our own council or sort of area, local area. So I've taken a massive punt on this. So it was an eBay purchase, and it was from a company called Tools for You, and I'll put a link up here somewhere. Go and have a look at their eBay shop. By the looks of it, they are the sort of company that go into other companies that are closing down, buy up a load of stock and sell it on, obviously making a profit. If you look at some of the stuff, not the cheapest place that you'll find those kind of things on eBay, but certainly it's all good quality stuff. There's no rubbish in there. So I found it just through a search, and I've been and had a look at the rest of their stuff. So Tools with a Z for You. As I said, I'll put a link up at the top somewhere, or a description of their eBay shop. Go and have a look, check them out. So we'll come in and have a look at this in a bit more depth now, and I'll tell you a little bit about what it is, why I've taken a punt on it, and why I didn't wait until I could afford it. So I'll cut this now and bring you in, and we'll have a bit of a closer look. Okay, so what did we buy? So it's a manual surface grinder. So I've spent hours and hours and hours in my apprenticeship and shortly after operating Jones and Shipman 540s, which are the hydraulically powered sort of industrial grade surface grinders. That's ideally what I would have bought if money was no object. But when you actually look at those, a lot of them, because they're an industrial grade, for the sort of money I've got to spend, would be absolutely knackered and would be as much use as a linishing belt, to be honest. So I've been on the hunt for quite a while, and obviously because my background's in tool making, the main three tools in a toolmaker shop, or machine tools in a toolmaker shop, is a turning machine, a milling machine and a surface grinder. So it was the next logical step for the workshop, and because of the boiler incident, I was almost ready to get myself a surface grinder. Because of the boiler incident, that was going to put everything on hold for at least a few months until my funds had recovered. But because I'd got a search on eBay, it came up, and this came up, and it popped into the search, so I just looked at it, and I took a total punt on this, and I think it's probably worth maybe in a few minutes going through the things that led me to take a punt on it. So if somebody else is doing a similar thing, they've got a machine up in the far reaches of Scotland and you live down on the south coast and you're not prepared to put the travel in, there are a few things that you can do, providing you've got some decent quality photographs to work off, to get a good idea whether you're going to buy a lemon or whether you're going to buy a peach. Now, fortunately, I trusted my intuition, and I have bought an absolute peach. Totally surprised. This thing has done, I won't say it's done zero work, it's obviously done some, but it has not done much. So I'll just move you around to the side, we'll have a look at the badge plate. I've done a little bit of research into the Eagle surface grinders, so I'll just walk you through what I know about them. I'm still learning it, obviously this has only been here a few days, so still learning, but we'll just walk through a little bit about the company, what they did and its heritage. Okay, so you can see the badge plate there on the side. So Eagle surface grinding machine, serial number, and it's prefixed with a 1, which means it's a model 1. So this is one of the first models that they produced. And then its number is, I'm trying to read it through the camera, 1584, so that will be the serial number. So this will be the 1584 machine that they made. They were produced in England, originally manufactured by the Dronsfield brothers at their Atlas works in Oldham in England, and then more latterly they were bought out by the Victor company, VICTA, and you can see that at the bottom of the badge plate there. And Victor were based down in Maidenhead, Berkshire, but then later they moved to Poole in Dorset. And the Victor company are also associated with the Centec milling machine and one or two other of the sort of small English-made machine tools. So this is, they made about 5 different ranges of these. They made a Series 1, which is what this is. Then they made a Series 2, 3, 4 and 5, and obviously there's incremental changes between each of them. And they were manufactured from the late 1940s up until the 1970s. So the fact this is a Series 1, it's going to be closer to that start date than it is the end date. So I think this machine is possibly from the 1950s. But it certainly won't be from much later than that, I don't think, looking at the information that I've got available to me, that I've been through just trying to get a bit of an idea about them. So that's enough about that. I'll just move the camera around and we'll go and have a look at some of the other bits and pieces of the machine that I've learnt. So we can see we've got an Eclipse magnetic chuck. Not sure if this is the original that came with the machine, but there's no reason to suspect it's not. And I've tried that out. All seems to work okay. It's a manual magnetic chuck and not an electric one, obviously. One thing that is bizarre and just alien to me, and that's the rotation of the wheel. So being used to Jones and Shipman 540s, their wheels always spun clockwise. This wheel spins counterclockwise. Don't think that'll be an issue, just need to get used to it. So what else do we know about it? It's a shaft driven, so there's a plain bearing at the front, plain bearing at the back. There's 2 grease points, and I'll show you those in a minute. It takes a 7-inch by 1/2 inch wide wheel, and it's belt driven behind the rear bearing from a motor that sits way down in the base at the bottom. So that's how it runs. It's a 3-phase machine, so I've got some cable on order to get my 3-phase supply across the roof of the garage down this wall, so that I've got something to plug it into. So we've not had this powered up yet. Literally yesterday just managed to get it off the pallet, which, believe me, on my own as usual, took some doing. I think this thing weighs near on 1/2 ton. It's a bit of a lump, and as most machines were that were built in those times. So you can see it's got bellows on it on the slideways, and it's got 1 or 2 other key features on it. It's got some damn ugly hand wheels on it. I've no idea why they're painted. Well, I do know why they're painted red, or I think I do, and I'll come on to that in a bit. It's got a proper 3-phase box on the side for the electrical connections. I'll just show you that. We're doing a bit of handheld, so apologies for that. So you can see there we've got a proper electric box on the side there for the connections to come in, and we've got proper conduit going down to the motor wiring under there. It's got a lead screw to lift and to raise and lower the knee, obviously with the table on it, and that's got a aluminium sectional cover just to keep the dust and rubbish off the lead screw, and what looks to be a phosphor bronze lead nut at the bottom there. I'll just move you back around the front. So in terms of operation, 3 control wheels, dead self-explanatory. So you've got this little one here, which is for traversing the table backwards and forwards past the wheel. We've got what I'll call the cross feed, which is here, and that's to incrementally pitch across your workpiece, across the magnet. And you've got your depth wheel here to raise and lower the knee, obviously to put your depth of cut on. Now this depth wheel is graduated in 1/2 thou graduations, and there's a big distance between each one of those. You know, there's There's a good 5mm between each one of those graduations, so lots of accuracy available on that. This cross slide is graduated in 2 thou graduations for your pitch across the magnet, which is more than good enough if you were ever going to really look at that, and you may need it for working up to edges and things like that potentially, but for general flat surfacing, you know, you'll get to know how far to pitch that each time after a bit of time getting used to the grinder. Obviously no graduations on this because this is just moving back and forth. Now I'm not sure if there ever were any graduations, but there's certainly none on it at the moment. So I'll just go around the back and we'll have a look at what drives the spindle. We'll just have a quick look at that. I've had the top plate off once already, so I'll just go and show you what's in there, and then we'll talk a little bit about why I took a punt on this and what I think I understand about it, just based on some, and it's only inklings and feelings, there's nothing guaranteed, but just based on some sort of clues if you want. It's a bit of a detective job when you're buying stuff like this, so we'll just go and have a look around the back and show you that. So I've just taken the lid off here. You can see we've got a bearing at the back with a grease point and a bearing at the front with a grease point. And you know, if you look at these grease points, I don't think these have ever been refitted. I think these are the originals, just looking at them. And basically there's a cup inside here that you pack with grease, and you pack it with grease in there. It's got a long thread on it, and this basically says Kingfisher, England, and made in Leeds. So it's a Kingfisher number 2 greaser, made in Leeds. So the idea being, once this is all packed with grease at some frequency that I've yet to understand, every time you're using the machine, maybe, or once a week or something, you will give this either half a turn or a turn or something like that, and it will squash grease down into your bearings. Now I think these are phosphor bronze plain bearings each end, I think. I'm not sure, I've not found that much out about it yet in terms of what type of bearings, but based on the age of this thing, I'm guessing that's what's inside here. So I'll just try and reposition the camera and we'll just get a quick look down inside there. In fact, I'll probably go handheld for that. Try not to make you guys too dizzy. So if you look in there, you can see this is the drive belt pulley at the top that drives the shaft, and then you can just see the shaft sat in between the 2 bearings. Now what you'll see at the front is there's a hole in the shaft. I'm not showing this very well, apologies. There's a hole in the shaft somewhere at the front. There you go, you can see it at the top there, and that is kind of a Tommy bar hole. So you poke a Tommy bar through this lid into that hole to hold the spindle still while you're taking the nut off the front to change the wheel, or at least that's what I think it's for. Again, I've not found the instructions, but it seems to make sense just looking at it. So I'll just pop this top plate back on and we'll then go into a bit more detail about what I've found after giving this thing a once over. So after an initial once over, so you know what you're seeing is what I bought largely. It's had a wipe over with a cloth. It was not much dirtier than what you can see here, a few fingerprints. One thing I will say for the guys at Tools for You, this was incredibly well palletized. It was a palletized delivery. It was well strapped to the pallet, sympathetic to the machine as well. You know, they're not strapped bits of a machine that you wouldn't really want them strapping down tight. It was really well wrapped in terms of protection. So you know, fortunately it was a nice day when it got delivered up here, but had it been regular weather, it would have been pouring with rain. This thing would not have got wet. It was really well wrapped up. So the boys have done a really good job of palletizing it. Unfortunately, the company they used to send it were next to useless. So that was Pallet Line UK, I think they were. It was supposed to be coming Tuesday. They gave me tracking numbers and all the rest of it. And having contacted them about 10 times through Tuesday asking for a slot, they couldn't tell me anything. You just talk to basically a robot, and Tuesday weeked into Wednesday, and before I knew it, there was a guy who turned up with this in the back of the lorry on the Wednesday. At which point, about an hour and a half later, I got a phone call from Pallet Line UK telling me that my delivery was going to come at 4 o'clock that afternoon, which I quickly pointed out to them that it was already here. So, yeah, Pallet Line UK, not the best, certainly from the one experience I've had with them, but the guys at Tools For You, as I said, have done a really good job of palletising this. So, what have I done in terms of my once over? Now, I don't really know much about surface grinders other than the Jones and Shipman, which I knew inside out 25 years ago. But what I do know is with a magnetised table, if you're machining small parts, you will always put them in the middle. It's a human trait, and if you think about how this magnetic table works, if you've got your bit right in the middle and the magnet does slightly let go or the part slips, you've got quite a bit more magnet to go to hope it's going to get another grip. If you've got it positioned right at the edge and it lets go, there's only one place it's going at that point, and that's off like a bullet. So what I would suspect happens with these older machines that have had a lot of use is this centre section of the travel, so right in the middle of the table, I would expect the table here to have some play in it and be able to feel some kind of a knock. Now there is a tiny bit right in the middle there, and I've not yet established whether that is on this slideway or on the cross feed slideway. I need to do a bit more digging on that. And if I move it right to the end, what I typically expect is things to tighten up as you get to the end, but this just doesn't tighten up. It feels the same all the way through the motion, nice and smooth, nice and easy, and at the end of the travel I've got exactly the same amount of knock. So it's suggesting to me that there's linear wear on this, and it can be taken out. There's a tiny bit of linear wear, and as I said, I don't know whether it's this cross slide, the cross slide here, or whether it's the table slide. So I need to do a bit of digging on that, and what we'll do is mount some DTIs and pull it around and just see if we can find out where that plays. But of the other slideways, I've played around. I've put a clock on the top and I've gone down to the table and I've checked out the graduations on here to see how accurate they are in terms of movement of this, and you know, it's absolutely smooth as silk, the whole thing, all of it. It just, there's no notchiness, no bagginess. It's how I would expect it felt when it was brand new. It just feels really nice. The spindle itself, I can't feel any knocking or banging. I can't get it going fast enough by hand to know whether there's any horrible noises. The only way we're going to know that is when we get power to it, but it certainly feels okay. So, as I said, I've given it a once over and I'm really happy with what I've got. You know, I was expecting to have to do some work to this. I really don't think I've got much to do to it other than wire it up. We'll clean these grease pots out. We'll put some fresh grease in. I've ordered some of the right grease for this machine. We'll give the slideways a good clean. I'm going to clean, this is a rack and pinion on this axis, so we'll clean the rack and pinion off underneath with a gentle wire brush and just make sure there's no muck in there and put some fresh grease on that. I think apart from that, I'm going to wire it up and give it a go, to be honest with you, because it's in really good condition. Now this wheel's probably getting close to the end of its life, but I think it will be good enough just for some testing. But I do need to order myself obviously a new wheel. This is quite small, so I will get a new wheel on order, or a couple of wheels on order. But yeah, I'm just totally blown away by the fact that this thing's probably 70-year-old and it's pretty much as good as the day it came out of the factory, I think, which is just amazing. We've got bellows over the slideways, as I said. I think they're all originals. This one's a bit frayed. These are leather sewn bellows, so the real McCoy, not some nasty horrible cheap rubber. If I look after these, they'll last me out and they'll last the machine out. They're really robust. So moving on to some things, I talked about detective work earlier on, if you're buying stuff off the internet. So as I stared at this thing, and I got a few photographs to go off that I was blowing up and looking at in detail at. And one thing that struck me is when I looked at all of the fixings, they're all slotted head screws. And I almost banked on the fact that these would all be imperial threads, which were what we used in that period in English machinery. So, and every single one of them's got a slotted head screw on it, and every single one of those slotted head screws is not mashed up. The slot all mashed up, they're perfect, every single one of them. And I looked at all the nuts, they all look original, apart from the two that hold the magnet down. I think they're probably newer. But even the nut that holds the wheel on, there's just no spanner marks on it. Everything looked age consistent with the machine, but not worn. And I kind of thought, this just doesn't look like it's had a lot of use. And everything I've looked at around the whole machine, that just bears that whole thing out. Every single screw is original. They're all, I think they're all quarter Whitworth or something like that, English threads. They're all slotted heads, and they're all as good as new. There's just no damage. All these nuts that hold the hand wheels on, they don't even look like they've ever had a spanner on them, or if they have, it's been somebody who knows how to use a spanner. You know, it's just been really well maintained, looked after, and these were the sort of clues that I was getting as I was looking at it. And one of the biggest clues, I've got to be honest, was the colour. So typically what you would find, anything other than a stock machine that's come out of a factory, so any other colour other than that, it's been in one of two places. It's either been in an industry environment where they paint all their machines the same colour so that they've got matching kit, or it's been in a college. And typically in colleges they paint things really bright colours for some bizarre reason unknown to anybody other than, I guess, the students. It's probably just to make sure they're awake, I really don't know. But this just smacked to me, having bright red handles that just look awful, by the way, so these are going to get changed because I don't like that. That just looks horrible, that red. The blue I can probably just about live with. It's not a colour that I'm particularly fond of, but I think I'll live with it rather than creating loads of work for myself. So I thought to myself, I'm sure this has come out of a college or a university. Well, it won't be a university because universities weren't around when this was built, but a college, a type environment, or a school or something. And that was borne out by the fact it's three-phase and it's got a proper three-phase box. Now that's obviously not, that's quite modern, and I would imagine that that's been changed out over the years as safety standards have moved on, and so it's got kind of the latest kind of box in it. But when I've took the lid off that and we've had a look at the wiring inside, again it looks like it's been wired by what I would call a competent electrician. It's not been done by a home shop type environment, I don't think, looking at it. And again, these are all guesses. I can't be sure or certain of any of this stuff, but it's certainly been wired properly. It's got the original conduit running down to the bottom. Everything about this, other than that box, I think is original. It's the very original stuff, and I'm pretty sure this has come out of a college is my guess. And so putting all those clues together and just looking at how undamaged it was on all the fixings and fittings and everything, just made me think this thing's just never done anything. It's been well maintained and it's hardly done any work at all. So I just thought, stuff it, I'm going to take a punt on it and hope that, as I said, I'm buying a peach and not a lemon. And it's turned out to be, so far, an absolute peach. As I say, I've still to get power to it. Don't know what's going to happen when we try that, but hopefully that will be this week, so I'll be able to include it in this episode when we get there. So that's a lot of waffling. I think other things to note is I can fit 9 inches under a 7-inch full-size wheel, so the table will drop down to give me a 9-inch gap, which is quite a reasonable amount of space under there. And I think apart from that, the rest of it really is suck it and see when I get power to it. One thing I do need, and I've also ordered, is some diamonds for wheel dressing. I don't have anything like that, so I've bought some what they call diamond pens, which is a little diameter piece with an industrial diamond in the top. I'm going to need to make some square blocks to hold them in on the table surface, but hopefully they're on the way. And as I said, my 3-phase cable's on the way, so I'll cut this now and I'll probably film a piece to camera towards the end of the week, hopefully when we've got power to this, so that we can hear it running. And if I feel brave enough, we'll probably stick something on this table. I mean, this table surface probably needs a grind anyway, I would suspect, but we'll stick something on the table surface and see if we can take some tentative light cuts just for the purposes of this video on something. And I'll probably pick one of my old rusty parallels or something like that just to see how that goes, see what sort of surface finish we get. The wheel doesn't look too bad, it looks like it's been fairly recently dressed, so I'm fairly confident to have a go with that wheel, I think. So as I said, yeah, I'll bring you back towards the end of the week, but I am there's only certain people like me that get excited about stuff like this, but I'm massively excited about this. Just the condition it's in and the state it's in. Again, I've got incredibly lucky so far, but I'm totally happy with what I've bought and what I paid for it. You know, there are cheaper surface grinders out there on eBay, probably as much as half what I paid for this, but I'm pretty sure most of them are absolutely knackered, whereas this is as good as a brand new machine virtually. So I couldn't be more happy with this. It's fantastic. So as I said, waffling a bit, apologies for that. There's some really interesting stuff. It's going to increase my capabilities. I think the only other thing I am going to try and do, because I'm in such a small workshop environment here, is make myself some kind of extraction tube here to fit, and I'll have to work out how I fit it all in, but that will join up to my shop vac, so that when I'm using this thing I can try and capture the majority of the, certainly when I'm wheel dressing and stuff like that, try and capture most of the crap so that it's not landing all over my surfaces on the other machine. So I'll have to give that a try, but that's certainly a project, a future project to try. And I guess I suppose I'm going to need to try and find some of this awful blue paint to paint it so that it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. I don't know. I probably won't bother. Anyway, I'll bring you back later in the week. Hopefully we've got some power to it and we can have a listen to what sort of noises it makes. Well guys, I've got good news and not so good news. So the good news is, sort of by hook and by crook, I have managed to get this thing running. And when it is running, the whole of this top end here sounds really sweet. It does sound nice. There's no rumbling, knocking, banging, grinding. There's definitely no grinding at the minute, but there's just no horrible noises. It sounds really smooth, really tight, really good. Unfortunately, and not being a spark, so I really don't know what I'm doing other than just basic wiring. I've wired this thing up, so we've got it wired up as per the wiring that was in it when I got the machine, which was just 3 phases input. So you got the 3-phase input and an earth. That was it. The neutral wire from the original wiring there was nothing on going to it, and the other 2 wires in the original wire, which, and again, not being a spark, this could be quite normal for 3-phase, I really don't know. So this was the cable that came out. So there was brown, black and grey. So these were the 3 phases, 1, 2 and 3. There was the earth wire, there was this shielding wire which also went to earth, which is, I'd accept that as okay because that's normal. There was the neutral wire which was terminated in a connector block with nothing attached to it. And there were these other 2 wires, just plain black, in the bundle, and they were also routed to earth. So we'd got basically a load of stuff going to earth and 3 phases. That was it. So I've mimicked that. I've got my neutral going to a connector block with nothing attached to it. I've got my 3-phase input and my earth wire to the side of the box. And I think the problem I'm having is my static phase converter that I use, which isn't ideal, is just not playing ball with this starter unit that's in this box. It won't, when I engage the start, and obviously I'm not doing it like this, I'm doing it with the cover on, but that's the start button. The power's killed to this at the minute. When I engage the start, that contactor should then stay in, and then when you hit the stop button, you obviously break the connection and the contactor comes back out. Now, I've had to mess around with my power settings to try and find the right power setting based on the readings on the phase converter, so I've got it set roughly to the right setting, so it's drawing 400 volts there or thereabouts on the meter when it's running. The motor sounds sweet when it's running. With the phase converter, if you've got the wrong setting, you can hear the motor's not happy, so I'm confident the setting's right. I've played around with the timings on the converter. There's a boost cycle to start with. I've been playing around with that to make sure there's enough boost cycle to get the motor up to speed before it switches over to its sort of run cycle. But whatever I do, this thing starts to get warm, and after a minute or so of running, once I do get it started, it just trips out. It's just not happy with the electrical supply coming from the phase converter. I don't know if that's an issue with the phase converter. I don't know if it's an issue with this starter circuit that's in this box. I don't know whether it's an issue with the motor that's in the bottom of the machine. I don't suspect it's the motor, but I don't know. So I'm kind of at a stuck point with this, and without spending heaps of money, I'm really kind of lost as to what to do, if I'm honest. So what I am going to do is, the next job now is to strip the motor out. I'm going to get the motor out the bottom of the unit, get that up on the bench, have a look at it, understand what power rating it is, what speed it runs at, all that kind of thing. Check it out to see if there's any tight spots, might have a look at it. That will enable me to check this top spindle out. What I am noticing, if I try and turn this over by hand, there is quite a lot of resistance to it. There's quite a hefty resistance there, and I'm wondering if that's part of the problem. I mean, it spins nicely, but it's quite stiff, and I don't know whether that's being caused by the bearings up here on the shaft or the motor itself. So I'm going to separate the two. Allows me to independently check each one, and then I've really got 3 or 4 options. Option 1 is to try a new box, but not being a Spark, I really don't know what I would be trying, and I've no reason to suspect this box isn't working correctly, and I think that could just be money down the drain. My other options are get rid of the static phase converter, which on reflection I made a mistake buying, and I should have bought a rotary phase converter that are much more expensive, but anyway, I've got the static one, that's it. So I could change that out for a rotary, which I'm not going to do because I can't afford it. I could change the motor out in the bottom here from a 3-phase to a single phase and put a single phase motor in. Don't want to do that. Of all the machines that you don't want to do that on, it would be on a surface grinding machine, because a single phase, if you look at a sine wave, you've got dead spots on your line, and I'm sure that would translate its way through to the wheel and the surface finish. I'm not totally sure, but it's an option. I could buy another 3-phase motor, a newer one, that's similar to the one on the milling machine that I know my 3-phase converter would work with, but then that still doesn't tell me whether this thing's got an issue, so that could be money down the drain. And my only other option really at this point is to look at a VFD, rather than having this thing plugged into the static phase converter, to put a 240 volt VFD on the wall and wire the thing into a VFD with the existing motor that's in there. That's probably the cheapest option. I think a VFD for this size of motor and machine, and again I need to confirm that when I get the motor out, is probably about the same price as a new one of these boxes, if I'm honest. It's not far off. So that's a potential option. I quite like that option on the surface grinder, and we'll get on to surface grinding, sort of my knowledge transfer, in a future tips video. But I was always taught, and I know this is completely wrong from a health and safety perspective, but I was always taught in my apprenticeship, once you've dressed a wheel, when you're taking the parts on and off the magnetic chuck, you wound the travel right to its end like that, you left the wheel running and you took your parts on and off with the wheel running. Because every time you stop the wheel and you restart it, the inertia of restarting the wheel could potentially throw your wheel out of balance, so you would at that point need to dress it again. And that was what I was taught. Now I don't know whether that's right or wrong or what, I don't know. That's what I did all the way through my apprenticeship. With a VFD, I would have the control to spin this up slowly, so you don't get that kick of especially for a 240 volt motor that you would get starting a motor up. So yeah, I'm still massively delighted with this machine. I couldn't be more happy with it. It's totally spot on. It's going to make a really good tool. I've just got to sort the power thing out. There's something not right with this setup, and as I said, not being a Spark, I've started doing bits and bobs of research, but I'm not totally sure what it is. So I'm kind of at a crossroads at the minute. I'm going to do some more research, I'll make a decision, and if there's any Sparks that watch this that might have an idea, please stick it in the comments at the bottom, give me a hand, would be really appreciated if you think you know what this might be. So I'm going to leave it there, guys, in terms of the entry into service, or not quite, of the surface grinder in the shop. I hope that's been interesting video, and hopefully, you know, in a very short time we'll have this singing and dancing, and we'll be able to get on and do some bits and bobs of grinding, which will be really nice to do. I've got loads of parallels that I need to make for the milling machine and all sorts of different things, so I've got quite a few jobs planned for this when we get it up and running. I've ordered myself a new wheel. That's arrived. It's still all packaged up at the minute, and I've ordered some diamond dressers for the wheel as well. So I'm going to leave it at that. So thank you all for watching. Hope you found that interesting. Thank you to you all for the support, all the subscribers. Thanks to the new subscribers, although they seem to have dried up at the minute. Not quite sure what's going on. I know there's some issues with YouTube at the moment, but yeah, things have slowed down a little bit. I'm presuming because the world's getting unlocked, and well, certainly the country's getting unlocked, and people who have been stuck indoors for so long watching YouTube are now going out and realising there's a world out there. So, but yeah, anyway, thank you for the support from you all, much appreciated as always, and we will catch you all very soon on another video when we'll be doing something else, whatever that may be. It could be getting this up and going, or we could be back onto a bit more machining on other things that I need to make. So we'll catch you all next week.